Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Emily Paisner. I am the Senior Director of Marketing here at Daybreak Health. And thank you again for joining us to discuss chronic absenteeism. This is a trend that is impacting students and districts across the country. Nationwide, chronic absenteeism is at an all-time high amongst K through 12 students. And today we're going to be talking about the correlation between mental health and chronic absenteeism and the multi-tiered systems of support that schools are putting in place to address the mental health and well-being of their students. I am joined by some incredible experts today who are each bringing their own unique expertise and point of view to this discussion. I'm going to introduce each of them, and then we'll get right into the conversation. And I'm so thrilled that Dr. Roberts has just joined, so we will introduce him momentarily. So first, I'd like to introduce Lorri Hobson, who's the Director of Product Development for Attendance Works. Her goal is to forge the path towards innovative solutions to help improve chronic absenteeism, and she brings such a wealth of experience from her tenure as the Director of ADM and Attendance at the Cleveland Metropolitan School District in Ohio. There, her leadership really extended beyond the school walls to legislative advocacy, culminating in the passage of Ohio's House Bill 410, which decriminalized truancy and revolutionized attendance-related regulations. This law mandates that attendance intervention plans before resorting to the criminal justice system, which truly transformed the approach. Lorri, thank you so much for your hard work and for being here today.
Thank you, Emily. It's my pleasure.
Next, I want to introduce Dr. Anthony Jackson, the Superintendent of Chatham County Schools in North Carolina. Dr. Jackson has a 28-year career in education, including being the superintendent at other schools in North Carolina as well as Virginia. Dr. Jackson has an extensive background in music and was a music teacher in the past, which really has helped to shape his leadership. Something that he shared with me was that, music was really a refuge for him and salvation as he went through school, and it really helped to connect a lot of the dots, both academically and socially for him. And Dr. Jackson has a strong history of leading schools and measurably raising their academic performance and lowering dropout rates, has been named North Carolina Superintendent of the Year several times. Truly so impressive. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Jackson.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Martha Salazar-Zamora, and she is the superintendent of Tomball ISD in Texas. She's been serving in education for 37 years, and in 2017 became the first female and the first Hispanic superintendent at Tomball. She's been awarded a top influencer in K-12 education amongst the most influential women in Texas, serves on the Texas Association of School Administrators, the American Association of School Administrators, and something I just love so much is that each spring she types a letter to all of her graduating high school seniors and personally signs them to congratulate them on their accomplishments. You have done so much for that community. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Emily.
And Dr. Roberts, so happy to have you here today. Dr. Roberts is the superintendent of Des Moines Public Schools in Iowa. He's from Brooklyn, New York, proudly born to immigrant parents. His career in education has spanned across Washington, D.C., Baltimore, South Bronx, and Pennsylvania. He is laser focused on preparing students for college and careers through a focus on culturally responsive and equity-based leadership and instruction. Such an incredible fact about Dr. Roberts is that he is an Olympic athlete in track and field and competed in the 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney. He shares that his understanding of what it takes to make a great leader comes from his time as an Olympic athlete and really the discipline that was instilled in him and his focus on continuous improvement. Thank you, Dr. Roberts, for being here.
Thank you, Emily. Thanks for having me.
Last but certainly not least, Dr. Devika Bhushan recently joined Daybreak as our Chief Medical Officer. She's a pediatrician and recognized public health leader with an expertise in health innovation, gender and health equity, trauma-informed systems, mental health, stress, and resilience. Previously, she served as California's acting Surgeon General and the office's inaugural Chief Health Officer. And in these roles, she was a key public health spokesperson and advisor to California's governor. She also led policy and practice innovation at a statewide level through co-developing the $500 million ACEs Aware initiative that focus on healing from childhood trauma. Thank you, Devika, for being here today.
Thanks, Emily. Great to be here.
Clearly, we have such an impressive panel here with us to share their perspectives and insights on this topic that is so important to so many people that have joined us here today. A quick note that we will be recording this and we will share it with all of you tomorrow. There will be a 1-question survey that will take less than 5 seconds at the end, and really appreciate if you could respond to that. We are going to leave time at the end for questions. So if you have them as the webinar goes on, please feel free to enter them in the chat box and we will get to them at the end. So let's get started. We have a lot of incredible people here to share their insights. So Lorri, can you start us off by giving us a broad understanding of what chronic absenteeism is and what the current national education landscape is really telling us about the impact of chronic absenteeism on student outcomes?
Absolutely, Emily. Chronic absence is defined as missing 10% of your enrolled time for any reason. So that's inclusive of excused, unexcused, and out-of-school suspensions. What we know about chronic absenteeism, unlike truancy, you will have millions of reasons why students are absent. And I literally mean the reasons are so vast. So, and included in chronic absenteeism will be students who are suffering for legitimate reasons or have legitimate reasons for being absent from school. How that's impacting our country as a whole, what we're seeing is students are less likely to read on track by 3rd grade. They're not scaffolding up or achieving in middle school, and they're less likely to graduate on time. So just to set a little framing around chronic absenteeism, prior to the pandemic, 8 million students were identified nationally as being chronically absent. And what we're seeing in post-pandemic is still alarming because the numbers are high. At 14.7 million students remain chronically absent today.
Thank you so much for getting us all aligned and on the same page. Dr. Bouchon, can you tell us from a public health standpoint how we see this showing up in kids' overall health and what factors you think are contributing to this epidemic?
Absolutely. And I just want to start by saying what a pleasure it is to be sharing the stage with so many fantastic leaders in this space. And it's amazing to see so many folks joining us virtually for this conversation. So I want to say that the numbers Lorri just shared with us are truly staggering, and they're not a surprise to any one of us on this call today, but this really equates to about 1 in 4 school-age kids who are chronically absent. And 10% of school just means about 2 days per month. And often this starts in preschool or kindergarten. And the reasons are varied, as Lorri alluded to, but a large clump of the reasons for chronically absent kids have to do with all too treatable mental and physical health conditions, ranging from infections, asthma, diabetes, chronic pain, dental issues, depression, ADHD, all of which are truly addressable, and these absences are preventable. Sometimes what we see too is mental illness in a parent, right, who is then unable to get that child to school. We'll see factors like absent transportation, unstable housing, being called on to support a younger sibling through an illness episode that maybe a parent can't take time off for. And all of these factors and chronic absenteeism in general are much more common in kids of color, of lower socioeconomic status, kids with disabilities, those who have experienced trauma, as well as those who identify as LGBTQIA+. And then being chronically absent essentially means that a kid is at higher risk for both poor educational and health outcomes through their life course. So things like school failure are much more common in kids who are chronically absent. And in fact, chronic absenteeism can predict school failure better than test scores. So let me say that again. Chronic absenteeism predicts school failure better than test scores. Down the road, kids can be at risk for dropping out of school, for juvenile justice involvement, unemployment, or holding less stable jobs, lower income jobs, and then getting mired in a cycle of poverty as they grow into adulthood. And then we know that education and health often go hand in hand. So chronic absenteeism also sets people up for adverse health outcomes like substance use or teenage pregnancy, depression, and a whole host of other issues. So it's really a question of unrealized life potential.
Wow. It's shocking to hear some of those stats out loud. And I appreciate you sharing them and really talking about how education and health really are so interrelated and go hand in hand. Dr. Jackson, can you talk a bit about how you've seen this trend play out in your schools and communities? Would love to hear from you on that.
Sure. Again, I want to first thank you all for the opportunity to share in this space as well. I would say that post pandemic, we have seen, I think, kids who have just truly been craving relationships. And I think wherever they can find those relationships and attachments, that's where they're really willing to invest their time in their space. And they're willing also to give up some of those things that we thought traditionally were a part of their pathway. And school might be one of them, where kids are saying, you know, I'm not getting the shine that I particularly want at school. But I get it hanging out with my friends. I get it not going to school. I get it late at night, which keeps me up so I can't go to school tomorrow. I get it participating in things that are not as beneficial for me as possibly I would want them to do, want them to be. And so what we see are kids who are literally craving relationships. They're craving relationships with their peers. They're craving relationships with adults. They're craving relationships with family. And they're craving all kinds of just interactions that the pandemic normalized not having. And so we have a lot of kids who missed a lot of opportunities to just connect with the right people. So in our schools, we have to be so very intentional about looking at both sides of this equation. While we're looking at the kids who are craving the relationships, I need to also be looking at the adults who are equally as impacted. And because I also say we have a chronic absenteeism problem with our kids, but we potentially have a chronic absenteeism problem with the adults who typically have been the stable forces for those students, and they have been looking for them and they need them to build those relationships that they're craving. So we have this circular thing happening here where I think our kids, they need the adults. The adults are carrying, I think, some heavy luggage post-pandemic as well. In our district, we recognize that we have to provide the support for them as well so that they can be that stable influence that would attract kids to school. I went to school because I had great teachers who cared about me, music teachers who wanted to, we had things going on that brought me back to school. So in the school settings, we have to be so very intentional about just making sure that we are creating these places for kids to plug in and to connect. So we see it every day. We have to develop early warning systems to really be able to see how we can help those kids make the necessary connections to feel healthy and whole at school.
Thank you so much for calling out the staff and adults that have been equally as impacted by this. And it's a great segue to a conversation that I had with Dr. Roberts when he and I spoke. You brought up some really interesting points about the overlap between student absences and teacher well-being. And so I'd love to hear from you, Dr. Roberts, how you view the importance of making schools safer and healthier for not only students, but also school staff.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. Certainly want to express just tremendous gratitude and what an honor it is to be able to sit on this panel with such incredible intellectual horsepower, but more importantly, people who are clearly champions for an issue that is now a crisis in pre-K-12 education in this country. You know, oftentimes in this arena of pre-K-12 education, those of us who are either teachers or school leaders and even district leaders are expected to just publicly declare how student-centered we are as educators, right? And that has become sort of the nomenclature that is used. But I think it's important for us now, certainly in recent years, to publicly declare, sermonize, and state that we are also adult-centered leaders. You know, I often think about how important it is for us to recognize that when we see this sort of phenomenon that the Federal Department of Education only recently started to measure and look at in 2013, and that's chronic absenteeism, we are seeing a positive correlation in many instances between student attendance or student absenteeism and that of teachers. I think it's incredibly important for those of us in positions of influence, policy, and leadership to try to create really safe spaces where teachers can feel supported. Those spaces have to become not just physically safe spaces and places, but psychologically safe. You know, we look at teacher attendance and oftentimes can see that our teacher attendance has a direct reflection or correlation to student absenteeism. So safety, 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 both in terms of physical safety, but more importantly, thinking about what are those tenets of socio-emotional needs that we need to tap into for all of our teachers. You know, in Des Moines Public Schools, for example, when we talk about what's important for the teachers, staff, and leaders in our building, we often look at this dichotomous relationship between Bloom's taxonomy and Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So yes, we want to make sure that all of our teachers are delivering on high quality, rigorous, and robust instruction. But if we're not meeting their basic needs, such as a sense of belonging, safety, and they're finding out that the schools that they're serving every single day are offering them those places of comfort, we're likely to see highly disengaged teachers. The last data point that I want to offer is this. I am fascinated by Gallup's annual poll around looking at employees who are engaged or disengaged, and this transcends the pre-K-12 arena. And every single year, even recently, that number continues to be staggering at about 68% of employees who are disengaged. That's what is happening to our teachers and our building leaders. The onus is on those of us who are in positions of policy to re-engage those adults. And once that happens, we're likely to see a positive correlation with students becoming re-engaged as well.
I couldn't agree with you more about the importance of creating psychologically safe spaces for both teachers and students. And Dr. Salazar-Zamora, you know, your district has grown exponentially from 9,000 to 23,000 students enrolled in the past decade, which is just incredible. And, you know, here we are talking about the importance of making schools a welcoming space. When you have integrated these new students into your community, how have you been able to really create that sense of safety and belonging amongst your community?
Well, thank you, Emily. I think that's a great question and something important to think about as many districts are facing the challenge of being a fast growth district. Not all, but many, and we're all experiencing new students coming in. I want to thank you for shedding light or to continue to flash a big flashlight on such an important topic with people that are influential thought leaders from throughout the nation, because together we can continue to find the best solution, because this is a problem that has existed pre-pandemic and has only continued or been exacerbated in many, many ways. So to your actual question, in Tomball ISD here in Tomball, Texas, we are a very fast growth district. When I arrived 11 years ago, as you mentioned, we were at 9,000 students. We're surpassing 23. Our projections will be at about 25 that quickly. We just enrolled another 1,000 students this school year alone. And so when that happens, you have to be prepared to ensure what we believe in our district is that every child will have a place to belong, a passion to pursue, and a love for learning that serves them well beyond the time they are with us. They seem like very simple boulders, but when you start with that very first one, and it's first intentionally, and that is a place to belong. If you don't feel as if you have a place, if you have people, if you have a tribe, if you have that network of support, then a lot of things can happen. And it's easier to see absenteeism that can turn into chronic absenteeism, as Lorri led off by definition, which is a concern because we are about teaching and learning, educating students, not just the teaching and learning piece, but of course the whole child, which includes their mental health. There are many factors that go into place when we think about this. So we certainly want to foster a very collaborative culture, a sense of belonging, and ensuring that we have practices in place. We are a great expectations district, a model district, and that is pre-K up to junior high. And then we've developed a program called Character that continues throughout, which is really about including students, whether it's as simple as a buddy system or helping kids that have come to us mid-year, second week, second month, at various times, not just ensuring that they are where they need to be academically, but they truly do understand they are part of our system, part of our district, and can be an important part and contribute, right, to a district that is fast growth, majority minority, and now we have over 84 languages spoken in the Tomball Independent School District, which also brings some additional challenges.
That's great. Thank you so much. And thank you all for sharing your thoughts and specifics around your districts. And, you know, you talked about this network of support and the importance of creating that. And I want to really stay in here because I think it's really important to talk about, you know, these multi-tiered systems of support in districts. And so, Lorri, I was hoping that, you know, you could talk about from a systems and structures lens, the overlap of multi-tiered systems and support and chronic absenteeism, and really specifically at the tier 1 level, how students can start to address this and really set a tone for a positive culture and climate in each of their individual school communities.
Absolutely, Emily. Because chronic absence is the leading cause of educational inequity, what we see across the country is that it's very solvable through a collaborative approach using the framework of a multi-tiered system of support. When you look at tier 1 being your dominant tier, it's what you do for all students without judgment. It's very important that what's included in tier 1 is messaging to address all absences. So part of what we're doing here is expanding the awareness around mental health and the need for support, especially for students who are impoverished, because within their communities, they lack the resources. Students with disabilities have multi-layers and needs for additional support. So when you look at what lives at tier 1, how do you message out? We have to be inclusive of collaboration with partners such as Daybreak. We have to be inclusive of philanthropic business community, include parents, students, and families in messaging the importance of your mental health. And when you see something, say something. And also empowering parents with information around anxiety and depression and what are the look fors, and having that conversation at home around the dinner table. What we have to do at tier 1 is remove the stigma. And at the high school level, pull high school students in to talk about how they're feeling. In post-pandemic in Cleveland, when I led attendance, we pulled in our high school students, like 370 across the district, to sit and have a conversation about why you're not coming to school, why your peers are not coming to school. And they simply said to us that we have so much anxiety. They called it out. We are frustrated. We are fearful. We're afraid for our parents. Something happened to our brains during the pandemic. We feel as if we can't focus, we can't concentrate. Students are crying out for help every day as the pressure cooker of our society applies more pressure to perform, to achieve, to excel. And our students are saying, I don't know how. This is what I'm feeling. I am fearful. So at tier 1, we have to have robust communications tools with partners who are readily available to support, assist, and to help parents define what they're seeing and what they're experiencing.
Thank you so much. I know something else you've talked about, Lorri, that I'd love for you to quickly touch on is the 4 pillars that you talk about for, you know, positive conditions for learning. I think that this audience would really appreciate hearing that.
Okay, so attendance works along with the American Institute of Research. We really wanted to simplify a way to message to schools what do you need to do in order to prevent chronic absence. And there are basically 4 pillars. And the 4 pillars are emotional health and safety, along with physical health in the same category. A sense of belonging and connection, academic rigor, and being connected to an adult who provides a psychological sense of security. We find that when any of those four pillars are missing, students are more likely to be chronically absent. We also define the solutions as being related to each of the four pillars. So, as many of my colleagues have shared today, it's important that students have a sense of belonging and connection. When we are so academically focused on rigor, we institutionalize the system in a way that students don't have a voice, or they feel like they can't bring their whole selves to school. There's a lot of judgment and stigma, so that belonging and connection is broken. And we also saw a break in the sense of belonging and connection because the pandemic forced all of us to our corners of safety, and we lost that connection. We lost that sense of apathy and empathy and caring and connection and ownership that we have for each other. Students are longing for a place to belong. In order for us to get to solvable approaches, we also have to include parent and student voice. We have to have a way to collect responses from parents, to open the door to have this conversation with parents. What does it mean for you and your family? And also for students to feel secure when they share what their fears are. Are we protecting them emotionally from being bullied? Because when we talk about physical health and safety, bullying also lives in that pillar. When we speak about adults being sensitive enough, teachers are being judged on performance, and oftentimes you don't want the student who's chronically absent in your class because it's going to lower your performance ratings. So how do we create that safety so everyone can belong, bring their whole selves to work, and collectively we can support one another?
I love how you talk about, the importance of community and family engagement and, creating this safe community. A quote that you said when we talked previously was, you have to build a bridge so that people feel safe enough to cross over it. And I just thought that was so incredibly profound. Dr. Roberts, you've also focused heavily on the importance of community partnerships and family engagements. I know your district is majority non-white, a significant proportion of English language learners, and 3/4 of your students qualify for free or reduced lunch. So I'd love to hear from you how you've seen this relationship between absenteeism and mental health play out in your district, and what tier 2 interventions your district has put in place to support this.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Emily. So, we think about similar to Dr. Salazar. We are so proud of what we consider to be one of our superpowers, right? And that's the diverse nature of our district. 31,000 students from more than 110 different countries where 83 languages are spoken. Majority of our students, of course, right, almost 70% are students of color. Yeah, believe it or not, right here in Iowa, because oftentimes when we mention sort of that data point, people ask if that is really the reality in Iowa, and it is. We recognize, though, that this work truly cannot achieve the level of success that we want to achieve if we attempt to do it only with the employees who are part of the Des Moines Public Schools. And so we are constantly leveraging all of our partnerships to support this journey, including our legislators, right? Those individuals who are now writing and implementing policy around what it means to address chronic absenteeism. I believe that chronic absenteeism has to be addressed with a level of seriousness and prioritized in the same manner we do reading and math. Chronic absenteeism is on the verge of becoming a major civil rights issue, because it doesn't matter, right, how sort of incredibly amazing of an academic program we have in place. If students don't have their butts in seats, then the learning is not going to happen. And so when I think about how we're prioritizing community partners to ensure, one, we're tapping into mental health resources for our adults as well as students. Those partnerships for me as a superintendent starts with building a strong relationship with the governor, with legislators. One of the things that I've said publicly to many of our legislators who have not seen chronic absenteeism as an issue is this old African adage that says, you know, when elephants fight, the grass gets trampled upon. Essentially, it translates into when those of us who are in positions of power and influence are not able to get along because we want to ground our daily decisions in a political stance, then we're only going to sort of perpetuate this gap around student attendance and student mental health. And when I think about the work ahead of us, we have to make sure that we are truly leveraging community input, community partnerships. And I want to call out, especially with our legislators, government officials, they have to become more invested in supporting school superintendents and our leaders.
Thank you so much for that very important call out. It's essential that there's that level of collaboration and advocacy. Dr. Salazar-Zamora, there are a number of projects that Tomball ISD has put into place that have centered around holistic wellness. And something that I found really impressive is that, you know, you had been awarded funds for winning Superintendent of the Year and you donated it to the Hope Squad. Can you tell us a little bit more about Hope Squad and other initiatives? Because I know there are several of them that you and your team have put into place.
Sure. Thank you for asking about that. When I was awarded Superintendent of the Year for the state of Texas, the state, the winner is always given $5,000. And thinking of what to do with $5,000, there's so many different initiatives from this to that. The one thing that resonated with me more than anything was a huge concern I was having that I continue to have around teen suicide. I've always been concerned. This is something that throughout my 37 years has been an issue from time to time, but never to the degree that we experienced. I told you the size of our district, so we're not tiny, we're not huge. But last year alone, Tomball ISD had 5 students commit suicide. Now, I don't mean suicide ideations. I don't mean suicide attempts. I mean successful suicides. When I break that down, the youngest was in 6th grade. The oldest was a senior. I could not think of anything more important than this one topic. And 5,000 isn't nearly enough, but it was something I felt strongly to put all the money into that, to say we are going to do one more thing on top of the many levels of support that we have that is singularly focused on teen suicide, so that more people do not feel caught up in a stigma of, I can't talk about this, I'm ashamed to talk about this, I don't know who to talk about, you know, about this topic. There were so many factors that went into each child, and I spent, as any administrator, any adult would, countless hours thinking about, what did we do? What could we have done differently? How did this happen? Why did this happen? And so what I will tell you is, one child is one too many in any of our districts, in any district in this nation. But if we continue to help people understand, everybody has challenges. It's how you face that. The people that are there, the multi-levels of support that we're talking about, the multi-tiers, the programs, the people, not just students, but staff and community members that can support these kids. That's what Hope Squad is all about. And so we went into this program with that singular focus of diminishing that number to 0 and keeping it there, so that our students know that no matter what the crisis is, right, no matter what loss you've experienced, no matter what horrible milestone that you are suffering, that you feel is a burden that you can't get past, helping children understand that people, we are, myself included, are all here to help you get past this, so that that number is never 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or any other number. So again, Hope Squad is something we've started. It's new in Tomball. It's something I was familiar with, but having the year that we had, I had to reflect on, it doesn't matter how many programs I have in place. They're not working, because that's not acceptable. There are 5 families in my community that don't have their children at home. And there's a lot of factors, of course, that go into that. But if the school can do one more thing, then that's the one thing we wanted to do. We do a lot of other things, including Parent University, which obviously has now more of a focus on mental health, warning signs, drug, alcohol abuse, bullying, being new to a community. It's very parent-driven. The topics come from students and staff and parents, and we decide, okay, what bubbles to the top and what do we feel will resonate? And overall, what will help students have the greatest impact when it comes to student mental health? It's a topic that we're not worried, ashamed, embarrassed to talk about. It's something that we talk about with frequency because it's important. It is something that there has been a stigma for far too long, and we want to remove that. Everyone struggles from time to time. Sometimes our young students just don't know how to handle that, and they take life-altering steps that have an impact on an entire community. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. And you know, it's horrible how tragic that, you know, that's happening across the country, and it's unacceptable. We need to do more to, like you said, break the stigma and help kids feel like they can turn to the people in their schools, to their friends, and to their families. Dr. Jackson, we've had the opportunity to partner with you and your team at Chatham County Schools. Daybreak's teletherapy program is integrated into your existing MTSS structures to really support students with these Tier 2 interventions. Can you talk about Chatham's, you know, systems of support and how you are approaching re-engaging chronically absent students with these supports?
Absolutely. And I would say that we are extremely pleased to be partnering with Daybreak. It was a great opportunity for us to add your services to our toolkit of interventions for our students. Chatham County is also a fast-growing community in central North Carolina. We benefit from that, but there are also some challenges to the geography. Our county is about 700 square miles. We touch 11 adjoining counties around us, and so sometimes getting support directly to students is a challenge simply because of geography. We have major universities in our region, we have major hospitals in our region, and yet we still have the challenge of getting service providers directly to our students. And so I know we're not unique in that fashion, but it became a larger challenge for us as we began looking at how we can address some of those challenges of chronic absenteeism, as well as mental health challenges that our students were bringing to school. And so MTSS is our problem-solving model, and we are very intentional about calling it that because we use it in a variety of ways for a variety of challenges. But in this particular case, as Dr. Hobson indicated, our Tier 1 interventions are those that every student deserves and they are entitled to. And so what we were recognizing was that we went from what everybody was entitled to the most severe, and we had nothing in between. And so Tier 2, it was really Tier 1 plus, and you jump from Tier 1 all the way to Tier 3, and we really didn't have a real good system for supporting our problems that came up in Tier 2. So I was extremely pleased when our team came to us and wanted to talk about how we could add an additional resource there. And so how we use Daybreak is we have a face-to-face provider, but again, geography can be difficult in that setting. Getting to them quickly enough and having enough to support 700 square miles. And what we were realizing was that we were almost playing a game of roulette with who got the services simply based on geography. If you were close to the population centers, the universities, and the service providers, you got services a lot faster. And so what we recognized right away was that teletherapy was going to be an opportunity for us to beef up our tier 2 interventions and to get the support to families and to students as quickly as possible. And hopefully by doing that, we could minimize the impact of some of these other issues that were keeping kids from getting to school, keeping families from being healthy and whole, keeping employees from being able to support students, that were being barriers to that connection that we wanted for our kids. And so we were very, very intentional about utilizing Daybreak as one of those major pieces in our tier 2 interventions for students and families. And so we've seen immediate success. Our parents have found that this is a great opportunity for us to begin to address some of these issues. What we learned, and I'll have to be honest, I don't know if I was surprised or just surprised at how quickly it exposed itself. We recognized very quickly that a lot of the problems were rooted not only in school problems, but some of the family dynamics, some of the family issues that were playing out that were keeping kids from school. The pandemic created this weird environment where kids were being forced to adult in ways that we were not comfortable with. Nobody would talk about it. So you had kids who were taking care of younger siblings. You had kids who had the responsibility for going out and supplementing jobs. We had kids who were dealing with trauma simply because they lost a loved one and nobody told them. They didn't get to say goodbye. Families didn't get to say goodbye. Parents didn't get to say goodbye. And so you had this dysfunction, this elephant sitting in that room. Families didn't know what to do. They were crying out. In our situation, the geography made it very, very difficult to really say, I'm hurting, can somebody help? Because it was like you were shouting and nobody was hearing you. So Daybreak became this opportunity for us to provide this space for parents to do it in a way that was not only beneficial for them, but also convenient. So what we found is that as we offered it, our families took to it, our students took to it, and they're serving families outside of school time, which means that we're seeing that kids are getting back to school. We're already seeing a decline in the number of kids who are chronically absent. It's not where we want it yet. It's not back to pre-pandemic, but we want to take advantage of every single intervention that we could do to ensure that our kids recognize that school is a place where where I can be okay. And that not only can I be okay at school, but school will also help us be okay at home. And so that connection we found has been beneficial for us. So for us, this tier 2, having teletherapy as a very key ingredient of our tier 2 intervention has made tier 3 more impactful, because now we can get our tier 3 intervention, our face-to-face providers, to our families a lot faster. And so we can, as we triage it, it has made a tremendous impact for us in a very short period of time. And not only am I hearing that from our parents, I'm hearing it from our staff, I'm hearing it from our student support staff, that this is a good thing for us, and that we've got to find ways to not only get more kids to it, but to expand this opportunity throughout our community and throughout our district. And because it's a competitive market, our face-to-face providers are actually the biggest supporters of the teletherapy, because they recognize now that they can put their best people on our most intensive cases. So I hope that helps you see how we have tried to stratify it over the MTSS process here in Chatham. And I'm sure that others have found better ways to do it, but this works for us.
Thank you so much for calling that out. And of course, we truly value our partnership. But a lot of the districts that we talk to regularly are, missing that tier 2 level of support. And it's just so incredibly important. And then I just wanted to call out Patricia in the chat, just said, thank you for sharing that we can't leave parents out of the equation. They still want help, but they're still struggling at times themselves. And so I think we've heard that theme throughout this conversation, that we need to find ways to engage parents in really being part of the solution here. And it's, adults are struggling as well, in addition to kids. Devika, can you just talk a little bit more about sort of this link between mental health support and teletherapy and how that can really help to get kids back in school, as Dr. Roberts said, butts in the seats.
Absolutely. So we know that looking nationally, when we offer school-linked health services, especially when they have a virtual component, they are both highly effective clinically and they enhance equity of outcomes, right? Because they especially increase access for those children and families who are the most vulnerable and who are most likely to be suffering from chronic absenteeism. And recall that untreated or undertreated mental health conditions are one of the big drivers for absenteeism, and that absenteeism can then also pose a risk for further mental health deterioration or new mental health conditions. So scoping it down to just mental health care in specific, we know that kids are 6 times more likely to get mental health care when it's offered through schools, and that such services will not only improve attendance, but will actually move the needle on health and educational outcomes that really matter. So they can reduce ED visits, hospital stays, and increase academic performance, reduce failure, suspension, and non-completion. So for example, in a Daybreak partnership with a California school district, Simi Valley, we're seeing that providing services in this way moves the needle on attendance rates. So attendance rates were 3% higher compared to the year pre-treatment. And we dropped suspensions and disciplinary infractions by 50%. And so teletherapy, as we've heard, truly can open up that ability to see the kid and the family where they are and where they're most comfortable. And it reduces all of these barriers, such as requiring transportation to get to an appointment, losing time from work or from school. And you can have continuity of care because you can see kids on weekends, on summer or winter break, and really make sure that the way in which their mental health condition is being managed is optimal.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bouchon. Before I open it up to questions, I just wanted to ask any of our panelists if there's anything else you'd like to add to this conversation before we open it up to the questions that have come through the chat.
I would like to add that it's very important as educators that we keep in mind our attendance laws and policies are only in their academic phase. We had mandatory compulsive school age attendance policies that dictated you must be in school until you're a certain age. And when you're absent, you're truant or you're forced into a legal system for support and addressing the barriers. What we know about chronic absence, because it's inclusive of excusable reasons and for many reasons, we have to keep in mind that a penalty system is not the appropriate response to students who are chronically absent. And so we have to remove the judgment. We have to step away and step back and open the opportunity for parents to share and for families to be vulnerable enough with us to share their why. And until we get to the root cause of why our families are chronically absent, we will never solve this. And I love the opportunity that Daybreak provides to reach families where they are. And that's a huge step forward from that legalistic approach, condemning everyone who's absent.
Emily, I'd like to add something too. I want to thank Daybreak, obviously, for the opportunity to hear from these wonderful panelists and to continue to learn about an important topic. I just recently finished a book that I might be late, to the party on this, but I heard about the anxious generation. And I failed to mention, I had heard about it and put it aside and waited until I had the time to read it start to finish. And wow, it just continued to remind me of, the beauties and the danger of what we have, what everybody seems to have in their back pocket, in their purse, in their hand, somewhere very near them. And that's inclusive of our students, our families. And in Texas, we have a lot going on around cell phone policies and the dangers and the benefits. There's a lot to that. And we're doing some extensive surveys in our district with parents, students, and staff. But I just think it's a reminder, if anyone hasn't read that book, it's a great read and a reminder of the connection to technology and mental health. I just had to make that comment.
I may, 30 seconds or less. I'm incredibly grateful as well, just for the engagement of this panel, and certainly your insights inspires me to continue to go forward and address this issue. Chronic absenteeism is everyone's business. Right. I think the same way that we have prioritized all of the other content areas state assessments, I think it's important that those of us who are in the pre-K-12 education field and other partners who have an interest in what happens to our students start to certainly engage in a collaborative manner to address chronic absenteeism. If we do not address chronic absenteeism right now with a systemic approach, we're going to perpetuate the kind of mediocre performance we're seeing in all of our students in terms of their academic achievement and academic outcomes. I think I heard Dr. Bouchon alluded to this in her earlier sentiments when she referenced that chronic absenteeism is a really strong predictor for students not being able to complete just their high school careers. And that is a destructive and devastating thought for us to have. And so I want to thank you, Emily and Daybreak, for creating the space for this conversation. But we have to make sure that we are lobbying, again, those policymakers so that we can have the appropriate amount of resources, right? In a resource-constrained environment in the pre-K-12 education space, we have to prioritize putting the right amount of resources and funds into addressing chronic absenteeism.
I just want to restate a quote you said, which is chronic absenteeism is everyone's business. And I think that that's something that we should all remember and really advocate for in our districts. And yes, the anxious generation is very well read amongst the team at Daybreak, and it is eye-opening. I would highly recommend that as well. Dr. Salazar-Zamora, sorry, I've been speaking for a while. 2 questions for you. The first was, who leads the Parent University program and how often does it meet? And can you please share a link of the program?
Okay. Yes, so it's led by our staff, but we will bring in, dependent on the topic. So if we have staff that feels comfortable and is the person that should be leading that topic, if it's like an in-district opportunity, something that we're doing already through our tiered levels of support, then it's an in-district counselor, a director, someone on cabinet. But then oftentimes we'll bring in experts depending again on what the topic might be. So we have a little bit of a combination of both, but a high success rate of students, or rather of parents of very young children, all the way to secondary, which I think says a lot to the success of the program, because it's sometimes challenging to bring in secondary parents in the evening for something like that. But we try to pick topics that does certainly engage. And I will get that link. Did you have another question? I'm sorry. Is that it?
The other question was around, can you explain the character program a little bit?
Yes, so Character, we partnered with another company, and there were bits and pieces. You know how in education there sometimes you don't see the benefit in the whole package, and you might like this, but this doesn't work. But you like the beginning, not the middle, but the end. And so with Great Expectations, which is out of Oklahoma, we loved it from start to finish. It worked for us. We've had it for a number of years. This is actually the 3rd district that I have brought Great Expectations into a school district with high success. But at the secondary level, we just weren't finding that whole package, something that was meeting the needs of all students in so many different ways. So we decided that we would just create our own, which is what we've done. It's an in-district. Every letter stands for something. And if I started to tell you every word, I would definitely get one wrong. But I'll get that and put that in the link as well. So Character is an in-district developed that I'm happy to share with anybody that's interested.
Thank you so much. We will also be sharing out, some key takeaways. So if there are links that we want to include in there, please send them my way. We will make sure to get them out to everyone. Davika, this is probably a good question for you. Do you know if there's any research about the effectiveness of telehealth versus in-person with children? Telehealth, Lee says telehealth can be a good tool to engage a child when in-person isn't available, as Dr. Jackson was saying, right? Like there are geographical challenges with that. But, she also calls out that there are many unknowns with teletherapy, and anyone can jump in on this, but Dr. Bouchon, I thought you might be able to respond.
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the individual child and family and their needs. And sometimes it depends on things like, patient age, severity of illness, where you might actually prefer telehealth versus in person, right? So for example, Dr. Jackson was telling us about how, they've reserved sort of that in-person modality for tier 3 students who have the most severe need and may need to engage in person. And using teletherapy for the folks in the middle who may be best served by that modality. And teletherapy, like I was alluding to earlier, also helps us open up access for a wider variety of clients, right? Folks who may not have the capacity to get in a car and drive, 20, 30 miles to their nearest in-person site can actually tune in on their own, on a laptop, on a phone. And because of that, it can actually serve many more people. So it really depends, I would say, on the individual and the use case, but that there are sort of benefits for both settings, depending on what you're looking for.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Kieran asks, and I think, one of the superintendents may be able to answer this. How do you get parent or guardian buy-in for mental health support? Many of you still talked about the stigma and the taboo for many families, especially as it pertains to, getting the whole family involved in some of this therapy and counseling. So how do you go about getting that parent or guardian buy-in?
I think with us, we start from a particular place of partnership before there's a crisis. We really work very hard to build trust capital with our parents as a school district. But more importantly, what we found is that most parents, they want the best for their children. And we start there and we start talking to them about how this can in fact be a win for their student. And what we've just not seen that as a real barrier, because when we're all focused on trying to help your child be a healthy and whole person, parents see that as definitely a win. They've not pushed back. In fact, we're seeing more parents reach out on their own once we share this with them. They reach out and they want to go further when we tell them this could be a benefit. I think there's a piece of it that we demystify this whole notion of therapy for a lot of our families, that it's not therapy, it's help, it's support. We use language that makes sense to them so that we're not having this really highbrow conversation with parents who see who see all of those taboos around therapy means something is wrong with me. No, help and support means I want to be better. And so we try to fix it in those types of, or try to shape it in that type of a conversation. We've not seen that as a barrier. In fact, our younger families, I think our data would show that we find more parents with younger children are reaching out a lot faster saying, please help. And more students are taking the initiative to say, when they can, please help. I need the support so that I can be better, so I can get back to school, so that I can do the things that make school a better place for me.
It's so great to see that trend starting to take shape where people do feel more comfortable raising their hands and asking for that help. I want to be conscious of time. There were a few other questions. One just came in around how you're funding the Daybreak partnership. So Dr. Jackson, that would be a question for you, or we can also, respond to that after the fact as well.
So again, we use internal resources that were already in our budget. We just reallocated those resources to ensure that the service was available. We thought it was important enough to ensure that those things. So it's a combination of some of our local resources, state resources, grant resources. We cobble together the resources to make sure this is available to our families. And then moving forward, make it a priority in our budget, which means that something might have to go to make sure that this stays.
I appreciate that question because we know that districts across the country are struggling with budgets and funding right now due to the ESSER cliff. So really appreciate how you've reprioritized and, use various funding sources in order to make this a key priority. Thank you so much to these panelists. We could probably talk for another hour, and you are all so brilliant. I'm so appreciative for you being here today. To our attendees, just a quick reminder that there's a one-question survey. Please answer it before you log off today. And, you can reach out to me directly if you want to hear more about Daybreak. But thank you all so much for joining this important conversation. We appreciate all of the hard work each and every one of you is doing every day to support students and staff and families in your communities. It's truly a job that never ends. So thank you so much.